It's my favorite part. Good evening and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. I'm Doug Sovereign, political reporter at KCBS Radio in San Francisco, and I'll be your moderator for this evening's program. Please make sure that your cell phone, PDA, other noise-making devices are now turned off, or at least silenced. And we'll get underway in just a moment, but first I would like to tell you about some upcoming programs. This Thursday, September 27th, Melody Hobson, financial commentator for ABC's Good Morning America, and Paul Schott-Stevens, who's the CEO of the Investment Company Institute, will team up to discuss the future of retirement in this daunting economic environment. They will speak to the current crop of retiring baby boomers, and they'll give saving strategies for the younger generations for those golden years far ahead. This will be a noon program. This is Thursday here at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco. On Tuesday, October 2nd, former Connecticut Senator Chris Dodd will be here in his new role as chairman and CEO of the Motion Picture Association of America. He will address how, as technology has moved entertainment content to the cloud, it's created economic challenges to both the industry and government in protecting the rights of the 2.2 million creators and makers in every state, especially in California. And then 3 days later, Friday, October 5th, Massachusetts Congressman Barney Frank will be here for a luncheon program. I should tell you, Chris Dodd is a 6 p.m. program, also here at the club in San Francisco. Friday, October 5th, Barney Frank will be here for a luncheon program. Only at the Commonwealth Club can you see both Dodd and Frank in 1 week. Congressman Frank will be here discussing the domestic and foreign policy issues pertinent to the upcoming election. It's my pleasure to extend a special welcome to any new Commonwealth Club members who are here this evening. You will meet the most well-informed and interesting people in the Bay Area when you attend Commonwealth Club events, all of whom are as interested as you are in civic discussion and social interaction. Now on to this evening's program. There are question cards you should have been handed, or they're on your seats, for Joan Walsh. Fill them out, write down a question for Joan. They'll be collected, and I'll ask some of those during the program. There's also a microphone in the audience, or there will be in a little while, and we will briefly take some oral questions toward the end of this program, so I'll remind you when that time comes, you can stand up, line up at the microphone, and ask your questions in person. We appreciate you keeping your questions short, and please make sure they are questions and not statements. Copies of Ms. Walsh's new book, What's the Matter with White People?, are on sale in the lobby. She'll be pleased to sign them outside this room immediately following our program. I'm going to pause for one moment now and then begin the program for our radio, television, and internet audiences, and I apologize, some of this will be a little repetitive. Good evening, and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. You can find the Commonwealth Club on the internet at commonwealthclub.org. I'm Doug Sovereign, political reporter at KCBS Radio in San Francisco, and your moderator for this program. I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished speaker, Joan Walsh. She is editor-at-large of Salon.com, appears frequently as a political analyst on MSNBC and other networks, and she's the author of the new book, What's the Matter with White People? Why We Long for a Golden Age That Never Was. Ms. Walsh has had a distinguished career as a political journalist. She's worked in government at the state capitol in Sacramento. She was editor-in-chief at Salon for 6 years. She is quite proudly from New York City, where I'm happy to say that her father and mine grew up on the very same street near Yankee Stadium, and not a major street at that. And she is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin. Ms. Walsh is here to discuss her ideas on the demographics and alliances at play in this election year and give us her take on what the possible outcome might be. Please give a Commonwealth Club welcome to Joan Walsh.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks, everybody. I told my best friend who's here tonight that I was nervous about this, that I've been doing all sorts of things and not getting nervous. And then I told Twitter, I tweet a lot. And somebody reminded me that yesterday was the 80th anniversary of FDR's most important speech at that point in his life. In 1932, he was running for the presidency, and he came out and said that a big defining difference between him and Herbert Hoover was that he was really going to use government to help people and get us out of the Great Depression. So no pressure there. I think I was nervous before, but then hearing that, whatever, that's a piece of cake. I get a lot of laughs. I heard people, every time the title was mentioned, people chuckled. And Chris Matthews said it today, and he chuckled and said, that is just a funny title, even though he said it like 9 times. It's funny every time. That's okay. And I realized that there are three actual meanings to the title, and I'm only getting to talk about one for the most part. The first meaning is sort of the title itself. What's the matter with white people? What's wrong with them? Why are 9 out of 10 self-identified Republican voters today white in a country that is 62% white? And that's a question that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been writing for Salon, for Image magazine back in the day. I don't know if David Talbot is here. Yes, he is. I've been really for a long time struggling with exactly why that FDR coalition, that New Deal coalition, fell apart. And looking at it through the lens of my working class Irish Catholic family, some of whom started the 60s as staunch JFK Democrats and ended it as Nixon supporters, and they later became the famous Reagan Democrats, and now they're just plain old Republicans. There's no Democrat in their affiliation in any way. They don't remember that they were ever Democrats. And so that's the meaning of the title that gets a lot of attention. And thanks to Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, it got a lot of attention in Tampa. I think people literally rushed to Google after watching the convention and typed in, "What's the matter with white people?" and got the book. So I want to thank them. But, you know, a lot of the commentary about Tampa focused on the nostalgia Republicans seem to feel for a golden age. As I describe in my title, and we can say that that's racism or sexism, and some of it no doubt is. But I think it's important for us as progressives, those of us here who are progressive, I hope we have some Republicans too, I think it's important for us to think about what the golden age was, and that there was a golden age for some Americans, and it really coincided with my growing up. I feel like I was the last generation of people to whom the country really kept its promises. Although if Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan get elected, they'll break those promises to me since I'm just under 55. So we'll have a chance to break promises to me too. I'll get to feel like everybody else. It'll be great. But the Golden Age, when we think about it, really was a result of the Great Depression and World War II. It was the result of people feeling as though those tragedies and those traumas created an incentive to create a big middle class, that we didn't want communism and we didn't want fascism, and the way to prevent that was to give more American people a stake in society and let them be less susceptible to those sort of isms and those sort of extremisms. And so we used government, we, the people, used government to build that great middle class. We started with the New Deal and making it easier to unionize. The GI Bill actually let people buy houses and go to college. It wasn't just veterans who could go to college. We were building public universities. The federal government was insuring home mortgages for people who maybe couldn't have previously afforded them. And we built the roads out to the great suburbs that some of us had our golden age. The problem with that time period, though, is that it left out a lot of people. It particularly left out African Americans and Latinos who were either actually excluded from those programs, or those programs, despite lobbying by the liberals of the day and the NAACP, those programs just did not prohibit discrimination. We know that some of the suburbs that we went out to have our golden age had restrictive covenants. And so a lot of white people don't remember the extent to which government helped them rise. My Irish Catholic immigrant family rose from desperate poverty to the middle class in literally one generation. But you've got this divide where a lot of white people don't realize that they got help, and then you have African Americans and Latinos pointing to the help that they got, and you've got this terrible communication gap. How can you say you didn't get something that I don't even know I got? So that's a big problem that I wanted the book to start to talk about. The other thing that I think we don't think about enough, and part of the first meaning of the title, is the extent to which many of us congratulate ourselves on the movements of the 60s, and we should. The civil rights movement was the greatest movement of my lifetime. Feminism is why I'm standing here. We were right to stop the Vietnam War. We did the right thing. But the 60s were not sort of an unbroken narrative of victory and happiness. The 60s were kind of scary for a lot of people, and not just white people. Their crime did rise. There were urban riots. The fringe of the mainly white anti-war movement got violent. Divorce rates climbed. There was a